so much, and she went through so much, only to find that when she did become human, her prince had already fallen in love with another woman. Hans Christian Andersen wrote the story of the Little Mermaid actually seeing himself as the Little Mermaid. Not a very handsome man, always in love, always trying to change himself for love, nobody ever loving him back. He was never married, he died very unhappy. The statue that we have just seen was a gift to the people of Copenhagen from the brewer of Carlsberg Breweries, Carl Jacobsen. He was a great lover of the theater. He had been to the Royal Theater where he had seen a ballet over the story of the Little Mermaid, and he fell madly in love with the ballerina. He couldn't have her though. He was already a married man. Didn't stop him from having an affair with her. He wanted her to be immortal. He asked her to model, and it is the ballerina sitting there, and she is life size. The statue was finished in 1913, and for years he sat nicely in the harbor of Copenhagen until 1964, when somebody came in the middle of the night and they cut her head off. We never found the original head. We never found out who did this to her. We do suspect it's a Swede, of course, but we have no proof. And then the unthinkable happened one more time, 25 years ago. Again, she was beheaded. This time the head was only gone for a few days. It was found and put back on. But the worst that ever happened to our little lady happened 20 years ago, when someone, again during the night, put dynamite around her, blew her off her rock. She was badly damaged. She did spend quite a few months in Mermaid Hospital, and now that she's returned to her rock, we all think that she looks just a little bit sadder than before. And ladies and gentlemen, we do have tissues up here in the front in case. Yellow row houses on your left goes back to 1610. They're the first row houses in Northern Europe. They were built for the stock of the Navy, for the Navy personnel. To this day, only Navy people are allowed to live here. There's 750 very small apartments, and you find that to this day, 2 families share bathroom, kitchens, and toilet facilities. So why would anybody in their right mind want to live there? Well, when you live in this old area, you are so totally, so completely, so absolutely surrounded by history and tradition. And doesn't hurt that the rent is about $100 per month even. These houses were built by a very famous king of ours. He was a sailor by heart, and he knew sailors, and he knew that somehow with a sailor there was always a bar around the next corner. And he knew that they never made it home with enough money for the families to have a decent life. So eventually he stopped paying salary to the sailors. Instead, they could go once a week to the stock exchange and bring back food. And coming up now on the right side, we have a large red building. This is the National Gallery, the State Museum of Art. Has art for many centuries, but especially art from a period that we call the Golden Age of Denmark, the middle of the 1800s. Period was not golden at all. The country was broke. There was a plague, there was a famine. Everything was horrendous, but somehow from these horrors came a flowering, a blooming up of the cultural life in Denmark. And we have more incredible artists, painters, poets, sculptors from this particular time period than never before. The Golden Age of Denmark. And in just a moment, when we start the bus, you will see on your left side the towers of Rosenborg Palace. The bikes you're asking, yes, we have lots of bikes. We are 5.8 million people in Denmark. We have 13 million bicycles. So that means that people have two, some even three. If they live out in the suburbs, they have one. They use that to go to the local train station. Then they commute to the city, get off at a station here, and there'll be one more bicycle parked here. And they'll use that to go to their place of work. And we do use our bicycles all year around in any kind of weather. We claim it is just simply a matter of dressing for it. And Rosenborg Palace on the left side is where we have the crown jewels. And then on the right we have the botanical gardens. It looks like nothing from here, but it has two very famous greenhouses. One of these greenhouses is filled with meat-eating plants. When you look at all the bicycles standing around everywhere, it might seem to you that they're not locked because we don't use heavy chain. But all the bicycles, they will have a small lock on the back wheel, which does not really prevent them from being stolen, but we must insure our bicycles. And if one is stolen, we make a claim, and about 10 days later, we have a new bicycle. And how come we use the bicycles? Well, it's custom, it's habit, it's tradition. Country is flat, so it's easy riding apart from the heavy wind we usually have. But the main reason is because a car is very much a luxury here. We pay 200% tax on a car, which means we buy one, we pay for three. Gasoline is like anywhere in the world these days, very high. Parking the car in the city is $9 American per hour, and insurance is enormously high. So the very high prices of buying a car, of owning a car, means that only about 65% of the population can afford one. Bicycles, though, everyone can afford. You will never find, not never, but very rarely find families with two cars here. And most people are in their 30s before they can afford to buy their first, usually used car. Now, where we are right now is where we had one of these original walls that for 400 years surrounded Copenhagen. Ramparts and walls. And there were only 3 walls going through the walls. And the gates were locked at night with a key. The key was left on the king's night table, and until it suited him to get up in the morning, nobody could get in or out of Copenhagen. By the time we reached the middle of the 1800s, living conditions were so horrendous, sanitary conditions so terrible, that the ramparts and the walls, they had to be torn down, allowing people to move out. And where we are right now is where we had one of the original gates, so we're going into old Copenhagen. And we call this area the Latin Quarters. In many countries, Latin Quarters is an entertainment area, not here. Latin Quarters is an area where only Latin was spoken for centuries, because this is where we have the old University of Copenhagen, and for 500 years only Latin was spoken in the university. And also this is where we have the Cathedral of Copenhagen, and again during the Latin time periods, only during the Catholic time period, only Latin was spoken in the churches. So a whole area where Latin was the common area. Old university here, it's new, it's from the 1700s. And the Cathedral of Copenhagen, also on the left side. And we have 2 squares coming up with 2 very original names. We call them Old Square and New Square. Old Square on the right, with the 500-year-old fountain, and on the beams of water is from where golden apples are dancing on the monarch's birthday, just once a year. And then we have left and right, the pedestrian street. First walking street in Europe, has been a walking street since 1960. It is 1 mile in length, and it is called Strøget or the Stroll. And we have New Square on the right, and the building with the pillars is a former town hall. Nowadays it's city court, and above the pillars it reads, land has to be, a country has to be built upon the law. And then you see many houses with the corners cut off. In the old days when we came out to a fire, it was with a fire engine pulled by 4 horses. Often the fire engine tumbled over when you have to round a pointed corner, and you never